Sustainability. It really is an aspect of value and profit. What exactly do we get out of the actual aspect of sustainability? We have a lot of people, they talk about the fact they're going to save the environment, they're going to do this, and then they turn around and they buy products manufactured in a different country, sometimes done with really environmentally unfriendly chemicals, different methodologies, super low cost wages, sometimes produced by child labor, sometimes produced in mass prisons. You have all kinds of different aspects, and they talk about sustainability and how relevant it is. Sometimes you have to sit back and take a look at a couple things. The aspect of number one, if you lived in Southern California, they have a typical advertising campaign, and it's been put up by Honda since the year 2007 of regional Honda dealers. If you hear the word helpful Honda people, that is kind of the aspect. Everybody in Southern California has heard the commercial. It's a set of cheesy advertising, except it's only cheesy because we continue to hear about it, and it's been well over a decade. They continue it because it's successful. People like certain things. They like a company such as Honda that does things to help the community with its labor without hiring actors for their ads. That's pretty incredible that you have that aspect of it. There's a certain aspect of cohesiveness, a certain aspect of community, and that is also the same thing that comes across with sustainability. If you want to sit down and do something different than the competition, have a product that's out there, pay attention to what the people like, this whole aspect of sustainability. You may not believe in it as a corporation. You may believe in the bottom line that I need to make a profit for my company. You can do that, but if you have the audience interested in things that you do that are sustainable, you need to pay attention to that and win your market that way. IKEA, they operate 403 stores. If you ever try to get an IKEA franchise, you can possibly get them, but normally they sell them by the country, and it costs $100 million for their first store. Other than that, it's easy to get into. So you have that in 2017, IKEA supply chain contributed about 0.1% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. They were already an eco-conscious store, including eco-conscious products that you assemble yourself. And yes, a lot of people make fun of it because you got to build it yourself. You save an awful lot of money, an awful lot of space, and of course, an awful lot of freight in the process. So they set out their main thing by the year 2020. We're going to sit down and have this spectacular goal, and their goal of reducing gas house emissions, making certain that they are zero emissions. They're really looking at that as a goal in the process. So they publicly advertised their supply agenda. They planned on reaching zero internal emissions by 2020. They really didn't make it. And it's interesting watching, this is a bit of history. If you look at what they had, they stumbled in the process because it was so hard to do. Now, they do have a big picture, they're out there, but in essence, I want to look at the aspect of the value and profit and the responsibility of sustainability. Number one, there is a cost savings with sustainable practices. You can save money by reducing your energy consumption. Here in California, in the last 4 years, we've had a 50% increase in electricity. And just in case you don't have an electric car, there's a 49% increase in gas. You have massive amounts of utilities just skyrocketing cost-wise. Who knows what that's about? But the reality is you can save a lot of money by reducing your energy, reducing your waste, reducing your emissions. Think about the aspect too of trying to reduce the number of miles on the road that trucks put on. That is all related to supply chain. And we're talking about the supply chain, and we're talking about sustainability. You can also have a different aspect since we're talking about the entire supply chain. Is there an area of sustainable practices for resource efficiency, reducing the need for raw materials? In the big giant chase you're seeing right now in the aspect of electric vehicles, everybody's looking for the second major generation of batteries for vehicles. You're looking at trying to get away from the lithium ion battery to something else. There is a something else. It's a steel battery coming out. You have another version coming out of something. The steel battery actually is less than 50% cost of the lithium iron, but even then it doesn't last as long, except for the fact that do you really need to have 400-mile range all the time for your vehicle? So they're talking about the actual implementation of trying to have this energy efficient vehicle we call electric vehicles, although if you really studied the data, they create their own area of pollution in the process. It's a little bit different than gas power, but it's still there. But the reality is you're looking at your aspect, letting the consumers know you're doing really sustainability, different practices within your supply chain. There's lower risk. If you embrace sustainability, it reduces risk about the environmental and social issues like climate change, water scarcity, and human rights violations. Although, if we all paid attention to that, I'm certain our shopping habits would really change quite a bit. But the lower risk aspect, people are looking for different reasons as to what your focus is as an organization. So pay attention to that. Sometimes we're so inundated by different aspects that you might have 100 people competing in the same space. Well, if you have 100 people competing in the same space, people are not going to choose the best value. The first thing to do is eliminate ones that don't agree with their value. So the first thing they're going to do is toss out a whole series of different things. As I don't like this company, this company. Well, these 5 companies are all sustainable. Now all of a sudden you go from competing against 99 other companies down to 4 other companies. That is a big deal. You want to be in the consumer's mind one of the companies that they choose in the aspect of I'm choosing them because, and they'll let them give you a shopping list of the why. Enhance brand reputation. Everything hinges so much on brand. One time I was teaching a class, we're talking about the aspect of trying to develop a new product. In this case, it was a polo shirt. We're talking about, okay, what's the first thing you have to do with the polo shirt? In my mind, it was style and design and making certain you have a focus group. Somebody in the back of the room sat there and says, get a logo. I think they're right. That logo, that brand, it begins with you being innovative, and really, we like brands. Now, if you go in your closet, you're going to find out you may have a certain taste in clothing that you get. There may be one brand that you particularly care about because you can always count on it to do whatever that may be. So that brand reputation is a big thing, and it fosters loyalty. If you can capture the imagination of the Gen Z generation, if you can capture that 20-year-old to 30-year-old, capture them for them loving your brand, you may have them loving your brand all the way for the next 50, 60 years, continue purchasing your product and enjoying sustainability, not so much by the environmental aspect, by the continue buying it. Oh, but wait, you use sustainability to become sustainable. There's a lot of merit to that. Access to new markets. Sustainable supply chains create new opportunities, tap into new markets. Regulatory compliance. You must follow the following rules. You know what? One of the biggest things that held up the United States Mexico Canadian trade agreement was the fact that Mexico did not have comparable environmental laws to the United States. They had to upgrade their laws in a lot of ways, how they produce things and how they transported things to match us before we signed the paperwork to sit down and have a flow of trade between US and Mexico. Mexico, after that was signed, went from our number 4 trading partner to our number 1 trading partner. The regulatory compliance was a big issue on that. Improved access to finance. There are some investors out there and lenders, they have a growing interest. There's actually funds out there for sustainable businesses. That is a way to sit down and obtain more money on a faster basis because you'll have more access to different aspects of it. Now, we'll see changes in this whole thing in the philosophy, but on sustainability, a couple things. When you're looking on the aspect of value and profit, pay attention to what's out there. Pay attention to what you see in regards to, okay, this is sustainable and how can it improve my brand reputation, and will I be able to woo an additional consumer audience that I may not have today? Take care.